Is there anyone here today who is familiar with StrengthsFinder? I've got a couple of people. It is a way in which you can describe yourself by using your strengths. You kind of lean into your strengths. There are 34 different options that could be, and you generally look at your top 5. And a few of them include empathy, includer, harmony, arranger, input. Now for me, my number 1 is achiever, which I know is a shock to all of you. I feel like it explains a lot about who I am. It means that I am an individual who is very driven, who has very high expectations, who has this need to constantly achieve. It's been described that in the morning when I wake up, my day starts at 0. And it's my job all day long to figure out how do I add things to my list, how do I do things so that at the end of the day, I can feel good about myself. And I have to tell you, this makes vacations particularly interesting and difficult. I was watching Josh's face. I just told him yesterday, man, I wish I knew how to relax. You go on vacation, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is also achiever as her number 1. And we said, when we go on vacation, what we have to do is create a to-do list. Even if it's today, I am going to sit by the pool, check. In a pool chair, check. With a drink, check. And an umbrella in that drink, check. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, but it's just the ways in which people who have achiever tend to behave. And as I read the story of Moses, I feel like that must have been one of his top strengths. Man, he is a powerhouse. He is a doer. And so let me get everybody up to speed here for just a minute. Moses is the one who goes into Egypt, has the conversations with the Pharaoh, and says, let God's people go. And they have their freedom. They have their mass exodus. And he's the one who leads the people to cross the Red Sea. He's the one who helps facilitate manna from heaven, the bread that falls down. He's the one that uses his staff and hits the rock, and the people receive water. He is the one who leads them in the battle against Amalek. And he holds his hands up during the entire battle. And at one point he gets tired and rests his arms on a stone. At another point he continues to get tired, and his friends Aaron and Hur hold his arms up. For as long as his arms are up, they are winning the battle. This guy is a doer. So we get to chapter 18, and Moses' father-in-law Jethro has come to visit. He has heard of the victories, he's heard of the successes, and he wants to have a conversation with Moses about it. And so they catch up. And they rejoice in God's care. Well, the next day, Jethro sits and watches Moses in action. And that night, he asks him this question: why are you doing this? Help me to understand your methods. And Moses honestly shares with his father-in-law. He says, the people are coming to me. They have challenges. They have conflicts. They need wisdom. They need a better understanding of what God's justice looks like. And Jethro has watched Moses operate, and he sees that Moses is a doer. Probably the people see Moses as tireless, and I wonder if he's got this thought process that says, there's so much work to be done. If only there were a few more hours in my day, or maybe I can figure out how do I expedite the process. Perhaps as people are coming to me for counsel, I can talk faster. Perhaps as people are coming to me for counsel, I can ask them to give me just a brief summary. Or maybe I can group the cases together and hear them all at once. Jethro talks to his son-in-law, and he says, I want to share with you my analysis. And I love this phrase that he says to him: this thing is too heavy for you. This thing is too heavy for you. In fact, this system is no good for anyone. I mean, imagine that people have come from all around the line as long as the eye can see. They are waiting to have their case heard. And maybe something as simple as my neighbor's goats on the land around my tent. Or maybe something as complicated as my spouse is cheating on me. This line is out in the hot desert sun, and they are already cranky because they've got some justice issue and they need worked out. And then they're cranky because of the weather. They've been standing all day, and they had to bring along the screaming kid, and all of them are waiting for just the one guy to help them resolve their problems. Now, there are times when lines like that give hope. Some of you may be familiar with the mercy ships. There was one in Gambia that had stopped, and there were 5,000 people who lined up waiting on screening day to be seen, to see if maybe possibly they could get the health care and the treatment that they needed. But there are times when lines only offer frustration. In India, there are 27.2 million cases pending in the lower courts yearly, which leaves the judge to the citizen ratio 12 to 13 judges per million people. And in fact, if no further cases were put to the court, it would take 300 years to clear out all of those court cases. And the result is that 50% of the people who have been going through this system admit that they have paid a bribe. 25% of those so that they could get a favorable outcome, and 25% who've said, I just want to expedite the process. And it leaves those who are already susceptible to poverty to be greater victims of injustice because they can't afford to improve their already difficult situation. See, justice is crucial, and it's time-consuming, and it can be frustrating. And here's Moses trying to do it all by himself. And it's a huge compliment to him. The people are coming to him. They trust him. And everybody mostly likes to be a hero. Everybody likes to be the fixer, or the problem solver, the problem finder, and we get it. Maybe he just doesn't like to ask for help. But Jethro can see burnout a mile away. And he's starting to see these signs of exhaustion. And there's actually two other accounts of this particular situation in Scripture. One is in Deuteronomy 1. The other is in Numbers 11. And as you read through it, Moses almost sounds like he's beginning to whine. Why have you given me these people? I'm sure no leader has ever said that. Jethro wants to be helpful, wants to help Moses avoid burnout, his own crash and burn. And not only that, but that of his people. Jethro says, not only Moses, is this not good for you? This is not good for your people. And so he makes a suggestion. He says, what if you didn't do this all by yourself? And I wonder what Moses' reaction was. As I've shared with you, I have always been a dreamer. I've always had big expectations. I have always sought to put on big events. So when I was in high school, I wanted to plan an event for all of our local youth groups. The band, the food, the speaker, all of these kinds of things. So I went and found every church in Fort Wayne, regardless of denomination. And there's a lot. And I sent out hundreds of invitations to these churches and to their youth groups. Went to Sam's Club, bought the food and the candy, priced it out, created this whole little concession stand. I led our youth band, recruited an area pastor to speak, set up the space. It was awesome. Everything was ready, and I kid you not, I literally expected 1,000 kids to walk through that door. Because not every church was going to attend. One other youth group came, maybe 20 kids. I was a bit devastated. And one of my friends comes up to me afterwards, a fellow youth group member, and he says, you know, I could have helped with this. I said, what? He goes, yeah, I was really just waiting on you to ask. Doubly devastated. I wonder if it occurred to Moses that he could recruit some help. Delegate out a few things, that he didn't have to do it alone, and not only that, but he shouldn't do it alone. Verses 19b to 20, Jethro says, these things you're doing, they're good. Yes, they're right. Keep doing these things. Don't change your course. Don't change your content. Don't change your focus. But in verse 21, he says, but you should look for capable people who are going to come alongside you. People that respect God, that are trustworthy, and that aren't corrupt. and put these people in charge, put them over the thousands, the hundreds, the 50s, and the tens, sort of a managerial setup. Make them judges. You still get to make the big decisions, the ones that there aren't any precedences for, but they can handle these minor cases. Lighten your load and everyone wins. And as much as Moses wanted, as the community numbers grew, he couldn't keep up. It was exhausting to try to keep up, and the people's patience was wearing thin. But even more so, Moses needed to cultivate those around him into leaders. And see, an organization's never healthy when one powerhouse does it all. No one else gets the chance to gain buy-in or ownership. New leaders don't arise. And when that leader leaves, the organization falls apart. It struggles to maintain health because everyone expected that the powerhouse was just going to do it all. So today I want to share with two different groups today. And first, it's important to understand that understanding delegation and ownership is not just for those who are working. The retirees and the stay-at-home moms and all of those in between, this is also for you. You see, it applies in all sorts of different situations, not only work, but home and church and organizations and relationships and project planning and all kinds of different things. And just because you fall in the category of a powerhouse in one doesn't mean that you might not fall into the leaders in waiting in another. So first, I'm going to address our powerhouses. I really wanted to substitute the title or subtitle, the sermon today, to say Moses, the art of delegation, or how not to become a workaholic. I was in high school, I went with a girl, and she was a senior. And at our senior band camp ceremony, she spoke to all of the other seniors, and she said, I just want you to know, my dad, who has been your band director for all of these years, really loves you. And I know that because he's spent more time with you than with me. We all get how detrimental overwork can be, and some of us even know the signs of exhaustion and burnout. We get that cynicism start to drag our feet. We're unmotivated, unproductive, or we get irritable with our coworkers. We got to take time to evaluate. Are we doing too much? Are we trying to do it all? Are we keeping others from enjoying this project? Have we kept others from buying in? We ask ourselves, what is it that only I can do? What is it that someone else can do? Because sometimes we need someone else's strengths to come in and cover over our weaknesses. Sometimes we need somebody else's bias to balance out our own. Sometimes we need somebody else who has a different sort of energy or a different type of availability. We ask the question, how do we share some of the load of what we're doing? Because if we're doing it all, we'll eventually collapse in exhaustion. And we have a spiritual responsibility to do so. In the Deuteronomy account, the Spirit of God is resting upon Moses as he acts as judge. And as soon as he appoints these other capable leaders, all of a sudden the Spirit of God is now upon them as well. You see, when we take it all on ourselves, we don't allow the Spirit of God to rest on others as they get to serve in the same capacity. Or perhaps, if somebody doesn't get a chance to do something else, they might not discover they have a bigger gift. As we invite the youth to share for Youth Sunday, maybe some kid will realize they have a call to ministry. And maybe as somebody teaches Sunday school, they realize they really love teaching and want to expand in that. Or somebody who enjoys cooking or singing in the choir, if we don't allow ways of delegating, people will never know. I want to speak also to our leaders in waiting. And I tell you, you fall in one of two categories. You don't get to sit the fence on this one. Don't wait for someone to ask for help. Be ready to jump in because sometimes the powerhouses have no idea how to ask for help. It may be a gift to them. And know yourself, know what you're good at, know what you enjoy. What is it that you have to offer? What kind of project are you really wanting to sink your teeth into? And what's something that's maybe not your wheelhouse? Don't be scared to try something. Delegation is one of the best ways to cultivate buy-in. It makes people aware of what's going on. gives people control, helps people get excited, and elicits an atmosphere of ownership, which means growth happens. You can ask Josh how it works out, but exponentially these things begin to work. Imagine, the caseload of Moses after he begins to delegate this out and watching the leadership get spaced out. I wonder if their cases were less. You have more people who are aware of what justice looks like, more people who have seen a precedence before them, able to solve some of their own problems, or able to say, perhaps it isn't as big of an issue as I thought it was. They see the world a bit differently because they've been involved in the process. Delegation and ownership go hand in hand. Powerhouse like Moses can't delegate if no one's willing to take ownership. He couldn't have passed this on to all of his judges if they stood there and go, no, I'm sorry, I've already done that. Not my turn, not good at it, don't have the time. He's waiting on someone who's sitting on the bench going, put me in, coach. This is my community. It's my house, my relationship, my church, and I want to see it thrive, and I want to see it grow, and I want to see it succeed. But judges, like those who arose when Moses asked, can't arise if they're not asked. And I don't want to skirt around the issue. This very much applies to church. Anybody ever heard of the 80-20 rule? 20% of the people do 80% of the work. I don't know if you noticed as we ask people to raise hands as we offer appreciation, some of y'all got your hand up an awful lot, which is awesome. I love it. But for a variety of reasons, the other 80% say, maybe I don't have the ability to do it. I don't have the skill set, or I feel like I am too old to do it. Or maybe I don't have the experience that those who have served in that position forever have. Sometimes the powerhouses take over. They don't really want help. They like control. They like doing things the way it has always been done. And what happens is the other people slowly back away and say, I'm not needed. And sometimes our leaders in waiting think that perhaps it's not their job to serve anymore. They can't serve anymore. They think it's time for the young ones to step up. They have served their time. And what happens then is the powerhouses just take on more, trying to save the church, but it's not good for anyone. Church is going to survive. Powerhouses won't let it be any other way, but it won't thrive. It takes everyone. There are a lot of ways in which we can all engage with what's going on here. And we ask ourselves, how do we flip this? What if we get to beat the odds and we're no longer an 80-20 church, but 100% church, where 100% of the people are doing the work? Imagine how much more we could do, and not even as far as numerical ministry, not even as far as number of ministries that we offer, but how much more could our impact on our community expand if we were 100% church? So our questions today is, where do we need to delegate? And where do we need to take ownership? And how do we use whatever we have in whatever position we're in, using the gifts and the skills that have been given to us by God in order to serve the kingdom of God? Amen.